Well, organisational inertia, a poor culture and almost no party governance. That's just some of the findings from a 5-month investigation into the brazen branch stacking within the Victorian Labor Party. The scandal rocked the Andrews government back in June and led to 3 cabinet ministers, Adam Somyurek, Robin Scott and Marlene Carew's, forced out.
We need to be a political party that is focused on the fights that matter, not fights internally, not squabbles internally. And we've got some work to do to change the culture of our show. And it's for genuine members. It's for those true believers. There were significant problems, and I'm very confident that as we implement the findings of that report and subsequent reports, we'll be able to deal with that.
For more on this now, I'm joined by former Federal Labor Senator for Victoria and Minister for Communications, Stephen Conroy. Stephen, let's have a look at the report. Former Premier Steve Bracks, who's got a very good name, former Federal MP Jenny Macklin, former Deputy Labor Party leader as well, very good names. Both of them are respected by me, not just the Labor side of politics. They conducted the investigation. How damning are these findings for the Victorian Labor Party?
Look, I think they'll be uncomfortable reading for many Labor Party members. I know that when the 60 Minutes allegations first appeared on the TV, members were shocked and revolted by what they saw in the conduct of Adam Somyurek and a range of other people. So this is a pretty blunt examination. Starting at the top, it's gone to ALP head office. It says head office has been part of the culture. It's lacked a willingness to actually implement the rules. It's not followed them. It's been part of the problem, and that's a terrible indictment on the leadership of the Victorian branch over the last few years, the admin committee and those sorts of things. So I think there's some very worthy recommendations. I'm hoping that the overwhelming majority will be adopted so that the Labor Party can make a clean start.
Yeah, you talk about this being sort of cultural, been inside the Labor Party for some time. We know there have been previous reviews that have had some of these same recommendations out today, including one review back in 1998. And immediately after that review, and the Labor Party said it would adopt the recommendations, it would make all these changes. Well, Daniel Andrews came into the role of Assistant State Secretary. Presumably, he would have had a role in implementing recommendations back then that clearly never happened. Can we trust that he'll get this done this time? He's been inside the Labor Party for a very, very long time.
Well, look, I mean, the Premier called for this review and the National Executive...
He had no option, Stephen. He had no option.
Well, the National Executive...
Don't run the lines. Come on, you are better than that. Don't run the lines. He had nowhere to go. He had to call and he had to sack 3 of his own.
Well, I mean, that was no question following the incredible revelations and the conduct that was shown on national television. He had no choice, but he did the right thing. He stood up to some of the key individuals, and he lost 3 ministers, pushed 1 out the door and 2 resigned under enormous pressure, which was the right thing to do by him. This report, I think it will be adopted pretty much across the board. I don't see any resistance coming from any particular section of the party to these reforms being implemented. So I actually think they will be implemented. The National Executive is taking it very seriously, and I would expect that there'll be a wholesale cultural shock. I mean, just the simple changes, like instead of each faction of the Labor Party retreating to its own separate branches and never talking to each other, they're all now going to be forced to be meeting together. So you'll be able to keep an eye on what everyone's up to, and this will hopefully promote a culture of cooperation rather than sort of conflict that was demonstrated on that 60 Minutes program.
One of the other recommendations too that I quite like is that you have to have ID to join the Labor Party. I'd like to have ID when all Australians go to vote. That's something that obviously the JSCEM committee, the Federal Electoral Matters Committee, is looking at. It puts it in its report every 3 years and nothing seems to happen, so we'll see what eventuates there. I want to go to this broader issue, Stephen, about the CFMEU. More controversy. National President Tony Mars quit. He's declaring that the union's impossibly divided and dysfunctional with no repair in sight. And that's on the back of the recently departed National Secretary Michael O'Connor. What's happening inside the CFMEU?
Well, there's an enormous power struggle that's evolved. I've known Michael O'Connor, and I've known him for literally almost 30 years, and I regard him as one of the best trade union officials in the country. But he's been under enormous attack inside the union. He doesn't have the support of the majority of the branches in the amalgamated union. He's tried to stick it out, tried to find ways forward, had to even take other branches of his own union to court to tell them to stop behaving against the union's rules, successfully, I might add. But there comes a point where you realise that you can't win a fight like this. And I think now I read that, as you mentioned, the national president and I think the national vice president have also resigned. So the CFMEU is in a state of meltdown at the moment. But the chances are that the John Setka forces are likely to take control of the whole national union. It'll be an
but so just on that though, what happens then, Stephen? Because if the good guys leave and the bad guys like Setka just get more and more power, you know, if the ones that have got the rap sheets as long as my arm are running the CFMEU, and we know how much, just in the case of Victoria, the CFMEU is in the box seat with all the money coming out of yesterday's budget in terms of big infrastructure projects. We know to get out of this recession, right around the country, construction has to be really running at full pace. You got this union that's full of lawless sort of thugs and people with, you know, lots of convictions behind them. If that's the officialdom of the CFMEU, we've got a lot of, you know, Australia's economic eggs in a very dodgy basket.
Well, look, the conduct of certain union officials is rightly scrutinised. I don't accept all of the interpretations you put on it there. I mean, the CFMEU, I don't think ever voted for me in their lives, so I don't hold a candle for them. It's a tougher industry. People die. Health and safety issues are real in this sector. This is a very tough sector, but every union has to comply with the law. And John Setka has a very strong reputation for being tough, and he's had his own issues that have been well publicised. I think that's part of what's led to this meltdown. Many people have called for his resignation. Ultimately, he's elected by the members, and the members at the moment appear to be supporting him, and that's what's made Michael O'Connor's job very difficult in trying to find peace. So the strength of the CFMEU inside the Labor Party is one of many unions. It doesn't run the Labor Party. It's been around a long time. It's had influence sometimes above and beyond its size, but right now...
It's very powerful in Victoria, Stephen.
Yeah, no, but I wouldn't say that it is running the Victorian branch of the Labor Party. It's very much sitting out by itself at the moment. It's not formally aligned with the left or the right. And so they're not having a lot of impact on the day-to-day operations of the Labor Party.
I would be very interested if one day the Premier would go to the lectern and say that because of the behaviour of the CFMEU, I'm not going to take any money from them in the next campaign. I'm not going to take their members to stand out there, you know, handing out how to votes and how to show against that sort of behaviour. Anyway, I'm being told in my ear I've got to go, but we can keep that conversation going. You're off the hook there. All right. Thanks, Stephen Conroy.
Good to talk with you, Peta.